Real Estate Real Talk, where we'll be doing a show every single Wednesday. So,
It's between probably 12 and 1.
yes, the busy agents, we may not make it on
Yeah,
time. It is, but we'll make it on time to your showing.
exactly. The story of a realtor.
All right, cool. So, obviously, as you guys know, if you were on here last week and if you weren't, we're getting on here and just talking real estate, real talk, no filters, whatever we got to say. Any questions you got to ask about buying a house, investing in a house, creating wealth, and just doing the things in the real estate realm. So, you can come on, you can ask questions in the comments, we'll answer them as they come. And then we also just have topics to talk about. Today, we're going to start off with, is now a good time to buy or
Brittany, you there? Can't hear you. Okay. All right.
I have time limits on my Instagram. So because of that, because I'm a scroller, so I had to put limits on that. But anyway, so is now a good time to buy or sell? Trevor, what do you think?
I love that question because I feel like every buyer and or seller asks me that on a regular basis, and I always have a different answer because every situation is different. If you have the means and you're willing and able to buy and you have the desire to buy or sell, I think it's a great time to buy or sell. But if you are preemptively trying to buy or sell for the wrong reasons, then I think it's not the great time to buy. Like market wise, like great time to be a seller because we still have 2 months of inventory, give or take, depending on the city. So there's still a solid seller's market out there. But at the same time, on the flip side, if you're looking for like the concrete answer of like buyers, like can you still buy a house, the answer is yes. It's getting a little bit easier as opposed to a year ago or 2 years ago when it was like a lot harder to get under contract. There's a little bit more give or play with the market for buyers now. I mean, I'm not saying you're going to get every solitary house that you try to put an offer on, but there's a lot more, opportunity out there to get a house because I think buyers are also starting to realize that 7% is such more of um, a regular interest rate as opposed to 3% that we will probably never see again in our lifetime.
Never see. And it was funny because I just saw a reel on Christina Gennari, who was also a part of the Keller Williams Domain family, who's a great agent in the Metro Detroit area. She mentioned on the news that, if you can buy now because the price that you're going to get is going to be better to buy right now than to wait till next year. We're never going to see those 3% interest rates. Like you said, they're not coming back. And I would hope you don't want them to come back just because of like how it got to that point, right? We were in the middle of a global pandemic. So we don't want that to happen again. I've experienced enough in my lifetime. I'm good. But but like you said, the interest rates are still below the average, even though a lot of you guys think they are high, they're not. 7%, I think they're at like what 6.85
Yeah,
this morning or something like
about
that.
685,
Yeah.
still a historically
Low.
average
Yeah.
rate
Mm-hmm.
over a 40-year span.
Exactly. And that's the part that a lot of people don't talk about. Like that's the part that people miss is that, when you talk about the history of the interest rates, it's still low.
I mean,
Our grandparents and our grandparents' parents, they bought houses with interest rates of 15, 17%.
yeah,
So we're still getting over. We're still winning. The
exactly.
only
Exactly. And
benefit
that's
with them.
exactly what I was about to say too. Like
Yeah.
we weren't a part of it, but there's the Reagan era, there was like 18% interest
Right.
rates. It's crazy. And
Exactly.
so 7 seems pretty low in comparison to that. A
Yes. Yes. I
little
think.
high for 3%, but we'll never see those again. There'll have to be something really bad happen for it to get back that bad
And we don't want
low
that.
again.
So, like Trevor was saying, he touched on like buyer demand, and seller. It is still a seller's market depending on the area, but the majority of Metro Detroit is still a seller's market. So if you are a buyer and you are out there looking for a house, be strong in your offers. Make sure you have that agent that's going to be, strong, able to negotiate. Make sure you get what you want, but you also don't overspend, because houses are sitting on the market longer. So although it's still competitive, they're still sitting on the market longer. You know, so that gives you, like you said, that gives them a little bit more wiggle room and a little bit more, like, okay, but again, it's still competitive out there.
You get
So
more
what
negotiating power that way.
exactly?
If it's longer on the market, you get more negotiating
Yeah.
power for sure.
So we're dropping gems here. So listen up. So I don't know if you guys have heard it out there, but timing the market, like, what does timing the market really mean, and why it rarely works? Let's dig into that. Like, so I'll start off, like, you can't time the market. You can't. You can't do it. Like Trevor said, if you're willing and able and you're ready to buy, you can get a pre-approval, you have money in the bank to say, to put on a down payment, do it. And there's so many programs out there. Just a plug, my mortgage partners, Belong Lending, have a 1% conventional loan down payment where the buyer only has to pay 1%. So they're saying, here, buy the house. If you got 1% saved up for a house that you get a pre-approved for, buy the house. Like, you can't time it. You really can't. So it's just a matter of being ready. Just being ready. And there's so many ways of pulling down money, whether it's your 401k, whether it's getting a gift, or, you just got the money saved in your bank account from a check.
Yeah,
Simple.
I love that saying. It's I always like take that saying, kind of flip it around, like timing the market versus time in the market. I mean, I know that's more of like a stock market saying or whatever, but I think it's so true to the fact that, like, you can't, back to what you said, you can't time the
Right.
market. So if you can be in the market, you're going to be way better off longevity wise. You're
Yes.
going to create wealth. You're going to get appreciation from owning your house,
Right.
and you're just going to start building that equity. So I hate, or I don't hate, but I just, I always take that saying and I kind of flip the script.
Yeah.
Time in the market is better than timing the market, because it never works. Like,
Right.
especially, like, even if you're like looking at the stock market, like, it never works that way. Like,
Yeah.
you try to time it like a very, like you might have got lucky during COVID from a stock market perspective, but
Right.
like the longer you wait,
The more it's
just
going
get
to
in the
cost
market and
you.
it'll go up over time as
Exactly.
long
The
as you're
more it's
patient.
gonna cost you. Unless you're Bobby Axelrod. I don't know if anybody's seen that show. I'm a huge Billions fan.
Mhm.
And he was like the stock market king and knew how to time the market. If you've seen the show, you know what I'm saying. But, you got to get in where you fit in. If you can do it, do it. Period.
Exactly.
So what
Exactly.
kind of tips do we have for buyers and sellers to win regardless of the market? Like, regardless of what's happening out here, how can sellers win?
Sellers win or buyers win?
Sellers.
Sellers.
We were talking about buyers, but how can sellers win regardless of the market? Like, what can we? So for a seller, I feel like, I know there's so many sellers out there that want to price at a certain rate that they've seen, or, historically, this house down the street sold for XYZ. But that ties back into having a good agent, right? And knowing that, hey, Billy Bob's house sold down the street for $50,000 more because they spent 30 renovating the house. So tips and tricks, like, if you don't want to put any money in before you sell your house, have it cleaned, have it professionally cleaned. Make sure, update it in the slightest way if you don't want to. And then if you don't want to do anything, then price it accordingly so that you can sell it. Make sure that realtor that you are, in an agreement with understands where the market sits. There's a house in my neighborhood right now. Average price point is about 450. The house is priced at 385 because the realtor did his homework.
Yeah.
It was an older couple. They moved out. They didn't want to be there. So they priced it accordingly because the house needs to be renovated, right? The house needs to be renovated. It's actually at like 400, but it's minor cosmetic. So the roof, they did all the major things. So now you come in and say, okay, pull up the carpet, paint the walls, things like
Yeah.
that. And if you know that up front and what the cost associated with that is you can price your house appropriately to get what you deserve. Obviously, that ties into, if you still have a mortgage and all those things. But even without doing a lot of stuff, these houses still have really great value to have equity in them or have enough to get you what you need and to get you either in downsize or, upsize if the house is, no longer working for you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like the fact of it really comes down to having that conversation with your client when in regards to being a seller. Like Zestimates are there to help, but they're very rarely ever 100% accurate. And like, I feel like that's been such a driving force as to like why we're seeing prices that are priced so high. Like we had to list a house like last year, 2 years ago, and it was probably $50,000 beyond what we recommended listing it at. And the caveat to that is like, sometimes you have to have those tough conversations. We had it,
Mm-hmm.
listed for what the seller wanted, and it sat and sat and sat, and ended up selling for really what we had originally listed it at. But it took 6 8 months for that to happen. Whereas like, I have a listing coming up this weekend. Like I've listed it kind of middle of the road. They've done a little bit of updates to it, whatnot, but it's not like top, and there's expectations that we'll have a lot of showings and multiple offers and whatever. And I think that's what's best for your client is get the best offer you can or multiple offers, and you pick the best one that is good for them, whether
Correct.
it's financially, occupancy, quick closing, or whatever else that might be in the offer, appraisal guarantees or escalation clauses or whatever. I think when you get multiple offers, I feel like that gives your client the best opportunity to pick the best deal for them. And I feel like when you do that, you also have a higher success rate of making sure that for whatever reason wouldn't close, those deals that you have multiple offers to choose from would close.
Right.
Obviously not every deal goes through, but
Right.
most
Exactly.
do. But there's always backup offers and everything like that. So
So what we're trying to say is get you a good agent, period. Because that will determine if your house sits on the market for 6 months or if you price it right and it sits on the market and you get an offer in the first 30 days. Like those things matter. Pricing is probably one of the biggest things
mhm.
that affect the rate of sale.
Yeah.
100%. I think it's probably the number one reason. I can't say that like with 100% certainty, but I'm like 98% sure because I see houses like this is overpriced, not gonna sell. So make sure you do the strategy right. You look at the comps with your agent. Look at the comps, read them right. Make sure whatever updates they did. If you're trying to price the house the same, make sure that you know it is equivalent to what they're pricing it at. And then for you buyers, out there looking for houses, set your expectations before you go out. That can probably be the biggest advice I can give to my buyers. Set your
Yeah.
expectations based on your budget, based on what you can afford, and know that it's going to be some give and take. Know there's going to be, you're not getting your dream house 100% unless you're building it from the ground up.
Yeah.
So,
You 80% rule. Like if you can get 80% of the way there, or 75%, some other agents say, but if you can get 75 80% of where like all your wants and needs, and you can figure out the 20%, it's very rare to find a unicorn. So just take your give and take, and also tagging off of that, if you're a buyer looking at homes right now, especially in the Metro Detroit area, you still need to be very quick and
yes.
decisive on making a decision whether you like it or not. Like this weekend, like I did an 8 a.m. showing and we had an offer in by 3 o'clock before the open at the end of an open house. Like you still have to be on your
Mm-hmm.
P's and Q's, ready to make a decision. Like this is the house I want. We're gonna move on it and whatnot. Unfortunately, we didn't get that house put in a very strong offer, but there's you still in Metro Detroit area real estate market, you still need to be like on it.
Yeah.
Granted, on the flip side, if the house has been on the market for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever, you might have a little bit more time and wiggle room. But Murphy's Law, as soon as somebody else shows interest, somebody
Yeah,
else will put an offer in.
of course. Every time
Every time.
I got buyers right now, like just looking, and things are happening where we go see a house and we go see multiples, and they're trying to figure it out, and then a day goes by, and two out of the five houses that I showed them, and some of them have been on the market for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, they
Yep.
disappear.
Yep.
It's like, damn it! It's like as soon as we think we're right there, so you got to be decisive. Write it all down. I tell my clients, I go through a very thorough buyer strategy session before we get out there to really make sure we hone in on everything that you need and everything that you need first. And then throw in some wants and then say, okay, I can't have this house if it has XYZ in it. Like, my complete deal breakers. Go through that. Make sure you're going through that with your agent, because if you're not, then you set up you set yourself up for failure 100%. So
Yeah.
we got one more question, one more thing that we're going to go through with you guys: how to choose the right neighborhood, not just a pretty house. There's some pretty houses on some not so much. So what do we mean when we say that? What do you want to prioritize? What are things that you want to take a look at that's not just the house on the block, right? You want to look at your school systems, especially if you have kids or if you're looking to have kids. And then also you want to think about when you go to sell, even
Hmm.
if you're not going to have kids, or if you don't have kids, within, your household, when you go to sell, what are people going to be attracted to? Those are the things you need to see: the commute, the amenities, your growth potential. All of those things matter, especially if you're buying your first home and you know it's not going to be your last. You want to think about those things. Can you, think of anything else like that you think that buyers need to be looking at when they're going out to choose houses?
Yeah, I mean, I would say commutability is another thing. Like, does your house have a yeah, but I mean, everybody has different reasonings as to why something might be a yeah, but you know, like resale value for sure. Do you like the downtown? Because I mean, obviously, there's like Troy who has great everything. They've got a lot going for it, but they don't have a true downtown. Whereas
Right.
like Ferndale or Rochester, like those have great downtowns. It's like what's your culture, or not necessarily like culture, but like what's your comfort level to maybe put your shoe on the other foot and be like, okay, if we were the buyer, what would they want,
Right.
type thing,
Exactly. What do
and
you
like
want, like, to live your best life and the time that you're going to be there, which is usually anywhere from 3 to 5 years for a first time home buyer, for a second time home buyer, anywhere from 5 to 10, right? So, what do you think you're going to need in this house or this neighborhood or accessibility? You know what I forgot when I went to buy my house, and I have two little ones: a sidewalk.
mm, mm,
I didn't even think, like, it didn't cross my mind, because my first house I bought, it had a sidewalk. So
mhm,
I wrote down everything. I was like, oh, I got to make sure I don't have a ton of trees in my backyard, because I didn't think about that stuff being a first time home buyer.
yeah,
I didn't know like that, trees have roots. I mean, I knew they have roots, but I also didn't know how they affect your plumbing and your all the stuff, right? So
yeah,
I wrote down so many things. I need to make sure I had a dishwasher, because when I bought my house, I didn't realize I didn't have a
mhm,
dishwasher. So I
mhm,
wrote down all these things, but because I had a sidewalk, I didn't think about having a sidewalk when I
yeah,
moved. So when I moved, and now instead of, when my first house I had one, now I have two, and it's street. It's all street. There's one piece of like sidewalk in my whole entire neighborhood that I found probably like a few months ago, and it's so small. It's like at one corner house, and it's just like a wraparound, and that's it. And I'm like,
yeah,
my kids want to ride bikes. They want to go outside. They want to go to their friend's house. It's not like a walk around the corner. You have to literally go in the street. And I have a 10-year-old, and not all people are, careful drivers. So think about the things that you want that
I,
may seem small, but when
yeah.
you buy something without it, it turns into this big
I,
thing.
I would say like the flip side of that, like what are the things that they forget about? Like,
Right.
so like for me, like I live by the water, and things that you don't see when you're looking at a house unless it's like that time of the year is like fish flies. Like I'm going through like my first phase of like fish flies. Granted, I'm from a touristy town up north in Charlevoix where we deal with fish flies, so it's not unusual for me. But like thinking like on shoes on the other foot, like oh my god, like nobody's gonna know like fish flies are like horrendous type thing, but like it's temporary.
Right.
Or like maintenance wise, like I think a lot of buyers forget like the maintenance costs of what you're gonna end up doing. Like everybody knows they got to cut their grass, but it's like okay, like just using me as an example, like I bought a house that has an abundant amount of overgrown landscaping. For being a landscaper son, doesn't bother me, but like that type of project, is very daunting from a cost perspective if you're not going to do it on your
Right.
own,
Right.
for a buyer type thing. So like I think like once you get the wants in the house, you also have to what else is out there with that comes with might not think might be an issue or you know an expense. So like for me, like fish flies lately and and whatnot, but everything else is a desirability to when you're looking at a house. So close proximity to work or not, you know, downtowns, do you have the residential like um area or food and scenery like that when you're looking for a house or, you know, everybody's got a different situation or what they're looking for. But you got to remember what else people might be looking for too if you're trying to sell it in the
Right.
future too. So
That is true. Okay, so we've been on here with you guys for what, 30 minutes? And I feel like this is a great conversation. We've had a great conversation. I don't think that there were any questions, but if you guys want to hop on next week, we'll be here same time, same place.
same time, same place. And also, if we talked about anything today that might need a professional outside of real estate, please make sure to talk to a professional and don't take our advice on that. Obviously, we're real estate professionals, so we can talk on that. But
Yeah.
any
Give us
taxes
a
or
call if you need anything.
financials or whatever, please talk to a professional
Yes. And make sure if you're looking to buy, sell, invest, or lease, slide
or
in our
flip.
DM. Yep, or flip. Yep. Let us know. We got you covered. Until next time, it's Real Talk Real Estate with Trevor and Brit. Peace out.
Peace out. We'll see you next week.